All right, so we're close to the deadline, November 26th, where supposedly this is all going to get signed and done. The Department of Justice still hasn't stepped in, but somebody did step in and say something. In fact, this is where we want to start. Professor Tanya, I don't know how to pronounce her name. We're going to just go with Monestier. She wrote a 132-page objection that the settlement is the worst of all possible worlds. And the reason we want to start here is because she brings up some points that are unclear to her. And some of these could also be part of what the Department of Justice sees. And this isn't the first time she stepped in. She stepped into other lawsuits before and says, hey, I object, and here's my 100 whatever page paper. Now,
nobody will read.
Exactly, because I didn't read it. I was going to say, Saul, I didn't read the 132-page paper. I only read this article, but from this article, and I'll throw it up so you guys have it too. Oh, well, you know what? It wants me to log in. I'll log in after, but I want to go over it because Saul and I both read it. I'm gonna stop sharing. She indicates, or she says in this summary, that this whole new settlement is even more complicated than before. Buyers and sellers are more confused. In fact, buyers are getting charged more in some cases. And now steering is happening even more, right? Which I don't see it happening more. And she also says that this is really a disservice overall to buyers and sellers and the consumer. That she can't believe that this was done, and that she hopes the Department of Justice, in essence, steps in and shoots this down and says, hey, it didn't go far enough. In fact, you clouded this up and you screwed it up for everybody. Saul, what do you think of this?
Well, I think all along, Tristan, one of the things that we've been saying is that it's too complicated. And then when organized real estate steps in to try to revise their forms to reduce the risk, of course, they then get overly complex. And so we would probably welcome the DOJ stepping in and making it clearer and easier, but that's not where the DOJ wants to take this.
No.
Right. And so when you read, I think she also wrote a paper for the was mentioned in a report by the Consumer Federation of America, which is kind of anti-industry anyway.
Yeah, she's very anti-real estate.
Yeah.
Real estate agents.
So I think main points, the contracts that we've been seeing are complex, and whether or not a consumer would understand some of them, I think that's legitimate.
Yeah.
And but I don't see the DOJ stepping in and reversing course. Right? If anything, they would step in and make things push it the other way, because we saw what they said in the MLS PIN statement of interest. They said, well, the proposed settlement is in the right direction, but it doesn't go far enough. And now she says it doesn't go far enough. Does she mean doesn't go far enough the other way? Or doesn't go far enough in the direction of the DOJ? And I think in the direction of the DOJ. And we know that the DOJ wants to decouple commissions completely. So now we're back to wait until November 26th and see if this is finalized and where we go from there. In the meantime, what have you heard, Tristan? Anything on people that are using buyer broker forms, either from their state or their brokerage or anywhere else? Are they having trouble signing up buyers? To me,
not at all. Not at all.
I haven't heard anything. I would bet, if I had to guess, I would guess there are a lot of people who are violating the agreement and not getting violating the proposed settlement and not getting contracts with buyers signed. I would say there's probably some of that going on out there. And the thing, I just haven't heard a lot of people coming back saying, because remember before everybody was worried, how are we going to convince buyers to do this? And now we're not hearing agents saying, I can't get a buyer to do this.
Yeah, I think we're all getting more comfortable in the process, or at least we're getting comfortable with our own processes from what we understand, right?
Yeah.
And I think from what we've seen, at least out here in Southern California, regardless of what contract we're using, we see John's in, perfect. Regardless of what contract we are using, just the fact that we're out there doing it is part of what you and I, when we started this back in March, April, we're like, you know what? It's just going to be a part of getting accustomed to whatever accustomed means. And that's exactly what's happening right now.
Yeah,
And
I know we're still getting listings,
yeah,
and people are still at the MLS, and their properties are still getting sold, right? And we're seeing change of status on listings, new listings, sold listings. It's still happening. So evidently, the adoption is taking place.
yeah, I agree. I agree. All right, we got a little presentation um, that we can't see your video, but we can hear you.
Or John, you mean?
Sorry, John.
Can you hear me?
Yep, we hear you, buddy.
Okay, you just can't see me.
We
Is my
cannot see you. But don't worry, we've got your presentation here that you outlined for us. The model for thought, right? Collect, protect, curate, and control, distribute, monetize.
Yeah, so John, I sent this to John. This is an 11 meg file, and if you're interested in it, we'll make it available to you. But this is the slide deck that I presented in Milan. So I was at the International MLS Forum in Milan, and
Okay,
then I created a presentation for one of my employees here at the MLS who we sent to the RISO, that's the Real Estate Standards Organization,
got
to
it.
talk about monetizing data and what that means. So I kind of brought these slides together, and John thought it would be people might be interested, and we can go over a few of the slides, and then from there we can move on. So just know that people around the world are interested in having an MLS, but not for the same reason that, or at least the primary reason that we thought people were interested in MLS was the offer of compensation. And then when the offer of compensation went away, people said, well, what's left? I shouldn't be a member. I don't need to be a member of the MLS because the offer of compensation has gone away. But actually, value in the MLS is from the data. And
Mm,
that the ability to have a single source of truth and being able to go to one place where most of the properties that are for sale are listed, are available for you to find, and that sold properties are available for you to find so you can do CMAs. And so in the rest of the world, they're looking at MLS, but not, and they want MLS, they don't have it yet for the most part. They don't want it for the offer of compensation. I was at this seminar. It was a 2-day event. It was last year was 100 people. It was in Paris. This year it was in Milan, sponsored by SEPI and the Real Estate Standards Organization. And
mhm.
we had about 250 people, and not a word about compensation. All about MLS, not a word about compensation. And it's about the data. And it's about the value of the data and how do you create value in the data. So that was that first slide. When we look at MLS, one of the things that MLSs do, number one, is they collect the data, right? And how do they collect it? Well, primarily from practitioners that input their listings into the MLS. And then after they collect this data, then they have to do what they can to protect it. And protecting it, usually through a data license agreement and copyright, and what can be protected? Photos, text, description. So when you put your listing into an MLS, you're helping create an asset of value.
Yeah.
And then we have to curate it. And that's what, if you don't have an MLS, you can't curate it and control it. And by that, I mean, if a property's sold, it shouldn't be available for people to find because that's kind of like leaving your for sale sign up 3 months after the property sells.
So I have a question on this. Um, with the slides, you can send these out to everybody after, right? We can send it out to
That's 11 meg, so we got to figure out a way to do this.
You know
We'll
what?
post it.
Why don't we put it on the Data Advocate?
Yeah,
That
we can post it there and people can have access to it.
We'll
Yeah.
blast it out to everybody. So you talk, so hear me out on this one, and everyone else pay attention to this specific thing because we're having a challenge with this right now in the United States. And you go over there, so you go to Europe to talk about connecting different regions so that we could all share properties, right? And there's like one way that kind of evens the playing field for everyone so that we can all play fair. You come back to the United States and NAR just punted the decision on what we're going to do with clear cooperation. It's like, hey, we're not going to decide on it yet. And then we've got these two sides angry at each other. Same thing that we talked about last time. We all agree on this here. Saul, John, me, we all agree. Clear cooperation. We don't think it's the perfect thing, but we think it needs to be in place right now, right? So now you go over to Europe, and they're like, "Man, we wish we had what you guys had," and we're over here saying, "Well, this sucks." Some of us, we should just destroy it, right? Where are you seeing we end up with this? Because NAR is like, let's kick it down because we have other things to worry about right now, like all of these lawsuits and settlements. Where do you think we end up with clear cooperation?
Well, so for me, clear cooperation is just another name for mandatory submission. We talked about this,
Yep.
right? So with clear cooperation, another name for mandatory submission and a bunch of little side rules. But mandatory submission means you must put your listing in the MLS if you want to belong to the MLS. So if you want to belong and you want to play and you want everybody to share their listings, you have to be willing to share yours and you can't withhold it. And that's the big positive aspect in my mind of clear cooperation. And so, but people got to be able to must put their listings in, because if you don't force them, then it'll turn out like a commercial MLS, which got some listings, but not all the listings. So it's not a complete database. So it doesn't provide the transparency and the value that it really can. And so where I see this going, and I don't know, so I see either NAR will back off and not continue to push mandatory submission, which I think is a benefit to everybody. And if they do that, other brokers, companies are going to figure out a way to build their own database. Then the question is, once they build their own database, are they going to share with one another, or are they going to keep it siloed to themselves? And that's not good for anybody. And so what we really want is everybody to put it in one place. We'll control, we talk about collect it, protect it and control it, curate it. When it's sold, let's make sure it's taken down. When the status changes, let's make sure that the MLS database reflects the status. That's better for everybody.
Okay, got it.
So then we need to be able to disseminate it, distribute it, because brokers want that data back for their websites and for their IDX websites and their VOW websites. So we got to be able to do that. And if we can do all those things, we're going to maximize the value of MLS data. And the reason that's important is if we can maximize the value of MLS data, we could actually find entities that would buy that data. When I say data, I might not be talking about what people think I'm talking about. I'm talking about selling information that won't hurt your business model as a broker, but will be valuable to other entities. And so when we talk about MLS data, there's three types. Basically, there's the property data, bedrooms, baths, square footage, property data. Then there's transactional data. When's the listing signed? When does it go on the market? When is the first time it's shown? How many times is it shown? When do the offers come in? When does it go? That transactional data is very valuable because it shows, is it a hot market? Is it not a hot market? If I buy loans in the secondary market, where should I buy these loans?
Whoa, hold on. That actually part of that data we got through showing time, and that's why Zillow bought showing time, right? Which was how many part of that data was there.
Could be one of the reasons that they did. I wasn't in on the inside, but I certainly think that showing data is valuable.
Yeah.
And
All right, continue. What's the third one?
And the third one is derived products. And so you can take the data out of a multiple listing service and create a CRM tool, or take the data out and create a tool that builds automated valuation models, digital appraisals, AVMs. And so people, right? So
Yes.
that's the derived product. So derived products, that's the third type. So those three different buyers for that data. And what we want to do is make sure that we maintain the value of the data. If we're going to sell it, we sell it to entities that don't have the capability of injuring the broker's model. And then we talk about eventually, sooner rather than later, I hope, flipping the model. That's what needs to happen. We need to flip the model. And what do we mean by flip the model? Right now, content providers get paid when they put their information on the internet. Right? Your content provider, you dance a little bit, you put it on TikTok, and you get it right. So you get paid for your content. But in real estate, you don't get paid for your content. You pay to put it in the MLS. The MLS sends it out to different places, and companies build multi-billion-dollar businesses around it. And
using our data. Yep.
use it, and then create people, eyeballs come and they call them leads and they sell the leads back. Well, what if we could protect that data in a different sort of way? What if we could make sure that when that data is offered, we get what it's worth? And then maybe we could start to figure out how we return that money to the brokers, to the MLS, to the brokers, and to the agents. So now you take a listing, you put it in the MLS finds the marketplace for it. That data is sold in the market to a benign company, and then the money could be distributed back to a certain port, back to the MLS, down to the brokers, down to the agents. And in a world where there's no mandatory submission, how can I get you to give me your listing if I'm an MLS? What if I said I'll pay you $1,000 if you give me your listing? What if I said I'll pay you $1,500 if you give it to me in 24 hours?
Hold on, let me show you something here. I didn't know you were going here, which I love. I'm going to show you so you guys can see. This is one video. I don't know. I did it a month ago, I think. One video on YouTube. You can see all the details, just so you can understand how the MLS data could possibly work. Okay. We've got one video analytics. I got 9,500 views. We've got 127 subscribers. So here's how much I got paid for that, right? Now we're looking at my data, my content that I created. I'm getting paid for, in this case, by YouTube. This is why people show up. So now if we turn that around and apply it to real estate, the MLS from real estate agents, and now we say, well, depending on how many listings you have, depending on how many views you get on that listing, how fast you got it on, right? All of this stuff, and obviously it declines over time. This could work really well. We just need to get really creative with this. It's like, who's going to do this, Saul? Is this already started? What's going to happen?
Yeah, well, in a way, it's already started, right? And so, but we got to make sure we protect that data. There are ways to do this. I cover some of them in that presentation, but this is kind of it's not a new idea, but it's starting to gain traction. Now, here's another thought, Tristan. What if you could kind of tag, blockchain maybe, so that if that data got used again, you could get paid again. And if somebody else took that data and used it, you could get paid again.
I like that. So it's like my old videos popping up on someone's feed again. I'm still getting paid.
Yeah. So now,
works.
think about the buy side. When people come and start looking at properties, if they're interested, they might fill out a loan application. That loan application information is really valuable. And then what if somebody got a loan, and what if you were the responsible party for bringing that person to a page where they signed up for the loan? Now, what if you could be compensated for that? Not compensated based on the closing, because that might be a RESPA violation, but compensated because you brought data called buy side. It's the buy side, and people are interested in that. And what if that helps somebody get a loan? And then what if that same information got used in a car loan later on?
I want money.
And so we talk about monetizing.
Dude, why doesn't somebody take this on and be like, this is what somebody NAR should just take this on and be like, let's do this. Who's gonna do this at the level we need?
Well,
Saul.
so John Riley and I have been talking about this for quite a while, eh, John?
Hey, right. Can you go to slide number 4, Tristan?
Wait, hold on. Slide number 4. Slide number 4.
And by the way, we are working on a technology right now that can meter. And so if somebody takes our listing from the MLS, we can tell how much traffic it gets. We can meter it and we can bill for it. We haven't launched it yet, but we're
Scroll up a little.
close.
This
Right
one?
about there. That's
Okay.
what Saul's talking about.
Yeah, business models that rely on MLS data should be charged based upon the data they consume. And so
Consumption.
instead of saying, well, you can have a data feed from the MLS, you can pay $200, $300, here's the data feed. What if we said, here's the data feed, we're going to measure how many people go to your site. And we're going to charge you based on the number of people because we believe people build billion-dollar businesses out of data that they get from an MLS. And who gets shortchanged? Most of the people who put data into the MLS. So business models that rely on MLS data should be charged based upon the data they consume. Content providers should be paid for their content. MLSs and brokers and agents should be paid for their content. And the way you do this is you meter the data. And today with Amazon Web Services, with cloud computing, with APIs, there are new ways to be able to measure this. And then can we charge people for it? And that's where we're headed, Tristan.
Well, hold on. Pause. Holly, I never pieced those two things together, and I talked to Saul often and John. That's a really good point. Hold on. If we backtrack a little bit and say one MLS in the nation, a big MLS. Saul, let's say yours. You've got what, 14, 15,000 agents?
Yeah, 12, but close enough. Yeah.
12,000. I was way off. Sorry. 12,000 agents. If all 12,000 agents now in the San Diego MLS have the ability to earn income from the content listings and data they put up there, now all of a sudden they're competing. We're now pushing out and competing against Zillow. Zillow is like, if they want our data, then they're going to have to pay us at some point.
Yeah. Well, we have to socialize the idea of paying based on your consumption, which is fair.
Oh, where do we sign the document? Because I mean, is
So-
everybody in on this? Like, I want to get paid for my listings.
Yeah,
Gee.
it's like, well, and if we don't push this model and mandatory submission goes away, you're going to have big firms that silo their data,
Of course.
right? So you're going to have a lot of other things. So this is
We're already watching that. We're already watching big brokerages say, hey, we're going to have our clients sign this. We're going to just keep it over here for a little bit.
Office exclusives, right?
Yeah, office exclusives. Lisa, yeah, we agree with Saul 100%. Cynthia says, I'm ready. She's like me. Sign me up.
So there's a number of steps that have to be taken, and we have taken a number of steps, and we're at a point where we're just about ready to test this ability to meter the data consumed and then bill for it. But we can't bill for it until we get people to understand what it's worth and why it's worth that to them, and that we're not going to be patsies any longer. And we're going to actually make companies pay for, and not to put them out of business, but it's like, what's fair? And we want to try to change them. So John and I, we use this term flipping the model, right? You as a real estate professional, you do a lot of things, and one thing you don't even think about it is you create content, but you kind of forget about it when you put it in the MLS. What if at the MLS level we could figure out ways to monetize it? Eventually, it won't start out with you can quit doing everything else and there's going to be enough money from the data to pay you. But we have to start somewhere, right? We have to build this. We have to convince people that there's value in this. Now we know there is, because look at these billion-dollar companies that take the data from an MLS. They do it on the premise that because they got a real estate license, they're entitled to the data. We say, wait a minute, you don't take listings. You don't sell any of the properties. You don't actively endeavor. That's a key phrase in MLS rules. You don't actively endeavor. So if you don't actively endeavor, maybe you shouldn't pay. Now, we'll still give you the data, but maybe you should pay more than the brokers that are busting their rear ends listing and selling real estate in your market.
That's
I agree.
slide 3.
I love that. Well, I wanted to switch over to one other topic as we I don't want to take up a lot of time that we've got here, but everyone agrees with us. By the way, there's a big community called Lab Coat Agents that could help out too. I'm not sure if you guys have heard of it. So anytime you want to tap on that once you're ready. Kim says, and if not, get paid per listings, at least not have to pay the MLS anymore. Like it cancels out, right? Currently it's
So that's like that's like an early step here is once we can monetize it now, make sure it's got the value. What we already went through the things you got to do to create the value. Once we do that, once we find the marketplace, once we start to monetize, as money starts to come in, you're right. The first step would be start to reduce fees, eliminate fees, right? Then when we figure out other thing, here's something else. That data is even more valuable than people think because what does AI live on?
data.
Data. We say
Mhm.
we got this old data. It might not be worth anything, but guess what? To some AI model somebody trying to develop something, we don't even know the value of some of this old data.
That's very true. Very, very good point. Now I want to transition to this. You guys sent this over to me. I had read it earlier in the week or the weekend. I don't remember when it was. Maybe it was last Friday. This whole, I thought it was really smart, but I want to hear what you guys have to say on this so that people can understand what really happened here.
Well, let me mention that we've been talking about this NAR settlement, and there's been close to $1 billion in the settlement pool that have been amassed.
Yep.
And just recently, there was a case in Georgia where there was also a settlement, and EXP settled for 35 million. Well, this is interesting, but the attorney Ketchmark and his people from the Sitzer and Gibson case, they said, "Well, wait a minute, that's unfair. That's too light. They got away with it." And there's a thing called reverse auction practice, in which the defendants can select a settlement, and that can be what would be governed. But in the Sitzer case, they want to move that back to the Missouri case and get a lot more money from EXP. So this is pretty interesting, where the attorneys, they're getting a good piece of the $1 billion settlement to date. They want more, and they feel that EXP has a much better balance sheet than some of the other defendants. So they're going after that money to bolster it. And of course, as I recall, when you get to the final, we've talked about this November 26th, if that's not extended or anything, out of the final judgment, that's when the attorneys get paid. So before that happens, I think they want it moved back to the Missouri case, where it can be incorporated, and I think build up the settlement pool to a greater amount. But of course, EXP and their attorneys are fighting that move. But I thought that was pretty interesting development.
Yeah,
I
well,
think you're
go
right,
ahead.
Tristan. It's smart. I mean, to me, it appears smart. So Sitzer Burnett's Missouri, EXP went to Georgia. Now you think of the Sitzer Burnett, those early settlements, Remax was like 55 million and Anywhere was 75 million. And like those were the early settlements.
Yeah.
And NAR 418 million. And this was Sitzer Burnett, the settlement there in Missouri. And EXP kind of did something. They went to Georgia and they got some similar case in Georgia, and they were able to settle out at 35 million. And the crybaby attorneys in the Sitzer case in Missouri said, wait a minute, that's not fair. We need to bring that home, and that they're not paying enough. So it's just kind of interesting, right? The law. and how it works or doesn't work.
Yeah, it is interesting that they decided to settle over there for a lot less. They're like, hey, you know what? We found a loophole. But I mean, look at how much money they put in, the attorneys, right, for the Sitzer Burnett. Look how much money they put into this initially to do all of their research and find the hole, supposedly the hole, right? And then decide what state they were going to go in and say, hey, we're going to go in this state and there's a reason for it. So I think it was pretty smart. Well played on EXP's part to do this. Let's see what happens, right?
Right?
And then on top of everything else, let's see when the Department of Justice steps in, because are we all still feeling like they're going to step in at some point in the next few weeks? Because they've only got 4 weeks, right? 4 or 5 weeks.
Well, that was our prediction, but it could be wrong. And of course, they stepped into the MLS pin case, and there the judge went ahead and put a freeze on the case, and whether or not Judge Bao would do it on November 26th, we're not certain. But regardless, I mean, the DOJ still has a ongoing case against NAR based on their exclusionary practices, and they can pursue that. That's where those administrative subpoenas come in, where the NAR and its directors have to reveal through their emails discussions about some of these policies. So that part is still ongoing.
So we still believe that they probably will step in. And even if they don't, it's not over, because as we mentioned early on, there's still the clear cooperation policy, and which is the mandatory submission rule that's being disputed right now.
But Tristan, the DOJ didn't step in, but an interesting thing happened, and I think I sent you the link to this. The people at Real Estate News, they went ahead and published a new report. They do an annual report, and it's usually for a lot of money, but this one is complimentary, and it's in regard to the 10-year anniversary of the danger report that had stirred all of the issues that we're talking about. So they've updated that, and they call it Opportunity, and it is free. And so I sent you the link, and you'll be able to put it in the material, where people are going to be able to go to this link and get this detailed report talking about a lot of these issues, including clear cooperation, the NAR settlement, all of those. And so I think that's a wonderful opportunity for people to get some good, solid information.
Yeah, that report, the danger report, now the opportunity reports by our John and my old friend Stefan Swanepoel and T3, his organization, and they're well known as being great researchers. And every year they put out a report, and this is the 10-year anniversary. And interestingly enough, for years you had to pay to get this. You didn't just get this for nothing. It was like $100 or something, $120. If you wanted the danger report, then there was a cost. But this year it's sponsored, by
Homes.com
Aha.
and T360.
And that's an interesting promo move, because they're going to get a lot of consumer awareness based on the fact that they made this whole report available complimentary, and it's got good information in there.
I haven't read this one, John, because I just got the link. I put it up for everyone to download. But have you guys taken a look at this?
Oh,
Yes.
yeah.
All right,
Hey, John summarized it. John, have you published the summary yet?
Not yet, no. Well, just basically what you're looking at now, where it's the synopsis of each one of the many chapters in the material. But I thought I sent this to you, Tristan, for your leisure weekend reading. You mean you didn't do it?
You might, dude, you might have. I'm trying to see. I'm going to download this really quick here and put it into Claude so that it could summarize it for me. And let me grab this right now. That way we can do this live and have a little bit of fun at the same time. Why not, right?
Yeah, no, it's a great report every year. It's worth reading or at least going through. And like I said, Stefan and his team are well known in the industry as researchers. They do a great job. And this is not a promo for Homes.com. Homes.com just put up the money so everybody can have a copy for free.
Too large. 100 and something pages, huh? Okay.
Yeah,
It's too big for this one.
comprehensive.
I'll try a different comprehensive. Light reading. I love how John calls it light reading. I love it.
This will take you 2 weekends.
Yeah.
Damn. Damn. I like it. Now I'm gonna go through it. I like this, guys. Great job. All right. So then what should we expect next in the next few weeks from what you're seeing out there? Any other settlements, any other lawsuits that are important now that we're getting closer to this?
Well, I'm thinking Halloween is going to be here Thursday. And that's probably the biggest thing we have to consider. What are you doing for Halloween? We used to give away turkeys. Or,
Are you serious? You did?
yeah, yeah, well, not to everybody, but to certain clients, right?
Oh,
And so there are different things that people used to do for Halloween as a differentiator. So that's coming. Wouldn't it be interesting to see something from the DOJ on Halloween? But don't right, don't quote me on that. We'll see.
that's so funny. Well, what are you all doing for Halloween? Anything interesting on this side in the chat? Let us know. John, what do you see happening in the next few weeks? And then we can wrap it up.
Well, I know that there's still going to be some filings of the copyright cases. Uh, People should not sit back and relax just because there is this proposed NAR settlement. There are attorneys that are examining every single move that the industry is making and know that they have a prime target. And this is why I always go back to the managing brokers in a firm. They have to take a look at all of their procedures and make sure they're consistent with the new practice. I think one of our early comments in this webinar was from a gentleman who said that he found out that the Northern Virginia has a really fabulous new listing agreement. And that raises the point that I think contracts should be reviewed by everybody, and more brokerages should have their own internal contracts. Why not have your own listing form? Why not have your own other forms as well? The one form you really can't have, I think, is the purchase agreement. Okay, I don't think you can have a customized purchase agreement. I think you'd have to use one that's more commonly accepted in the community. But why not with the buyer brokerage agreement? It should be customized to the broker. And so I don't see a problem with using and developing those. And I encourage people, especially managing brokers, to take a look at it and then train your people on the new contracts.
Somebody asked about, is there anything we as agents can do to affect the outcome? And I would say, and John, tell me what you think. I don't think there's anything that we as agents can do to affect the outcome. I think the outcome is this whole thing is in process. But what we can do as licensees and as agents is pay attention to what's coming down and do everything you can to comply and realize that this is a new way of doing business, that the industry really is changing, that there are new threats we never thought about before, but that doesn't mean that you can't exist in the business. I've seen some very interesting models and things that people are trying to do. And this idea that commissions are going to be at risk is actually an old idea. John, you'll remember, I found this book from 2006.
Well, wow. Yeah.
All right, Professor Danny, and she did a great job in 2006 talking about commissions at risk. And I'm going to go back over it again and see what advice she had back then. So we've been dealing with this for quite a while. We can't affect the outcome at all, I don't think, as individual practitioners. And we shouldn't worry about that. What we need to do is we need to pay attention to what's to what's going on. As John said, make sure that we stay within the legal bounds. We're doing our job, we're representing our clients effectively, and that we support the MLS and that we support mandatory submission. And I know some people talk about they don't think that makes sense and that's not right, but I think that's critical. And I think the one thing you can do, the most powerful thing that you can do for the industry and for yourself, is to support mandatory submission, otherwise known as clear cooperation, because that's a critical piece to keeping the MLS in place, and the MLS really helps everybody survive.
Yeah, I agree. Guys, two things. One, I just created a quick summary through ChatGPT from that PDF. I asked it for a quick summary of that 100 and whatever page document, and I put the link to the document at the bottom. So I'll give this over in the chat to you guys. That's number one. I'll do this right now. Let me grab that link. There it is. Number two, I want to end by knowing what happens. What happens with NAR, with the Department of Justice, with real estate, if Harris wins and if Trump wins?
Uh,
I mean, dude, we're like a week away. So what happens? Anything happen?
yeah, so here's what I think. First of all, somebody posted something about it, and one thing for sure, that if there's a change of power in the White House, there probably will be different emphasis in the Department of Justice, right? But I would warn people not to think that if there is a change, it's going to change completely, because we've seen these efforts against the real estate industry with both Democrat and Republican regimes. And so remember that the Department of Justice is like this establishment within the government. It's the swamp, right? It's like, just because you change the people in charge doesn't mean you can change everything within the institutions of government itself. And so while there might be some difference, I wouldn't expect that if, and it's based on the question, that if Trump's elected, all of a sudden all this goes away, because I don't think that that's a reality.
We're too far in, but they could they technically punt it to deal with it later as far as signing it through?
Well, they could change it. Remember that under the old Trump administration, prior to Joe Biden getting elected, the DOJ came to agreement with the National Association of Realtors. And then when the new administration took over, and they reneged, the Department of Justice reneged on its settlement with NAR and went back after NAR. And then NAR fought that, and NAR won. And then the Department of Justice fought that, and the Department of Justice won. And now NAR has appealed to the Supreme Court, huh, John? And so we'll see where this ends up. So, yeah, we've got recent history where a change of administrations changed what the DOJ believed they wanted to do, and they actually did something that NAR fought back against. And when NAR won, John and I said to each other, winning against the Department of Justice is tough, because they got really deep pockets and they got long memories.
Long memories. That's very true. All right, John, what do you think? What happens next with Harris or Trump?
Harris or Trump? Well, I give you the answer that my law school professors already gave me when we asked them that type of a piercing question. And the answer typically was, who knows?
Well, I knew you were going to go there.
Who knows?
All right, guys, we're getting closer to November 26th. Saul, John, thanks for being on. Everyone else, thanks for jumping in and staying for the whole thing. We appreciate you. Let us know if you've got any questions. What we typically do, John had a great idea early on, is any questions that are asked in the chat, we typically field them. Our team goes through them, and then John goes through and then decides what we're going to tackle and how we're going to answer those. So if you have any questions and you put them in the chat and they somehow don't get answered, we're still looking through them, and you can thank John for that. So.
Hey, and visit our blog. We try to put as much of that information up on our blog as possible. That's thedataadvocate.com.
Let me
And
grab that right
we don't
now.
put everything up there, but we do our best to get what we can up there for you.
You do a great job. I did a short video on the Department of Justice sending signals that they were going to step in. That one did very well. So thanks, guys. I appreciate that. Thanks,
Thanks,
everybody.
Tristan.
Okay, thank you.
Happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween. That's right. 2 more days, I think. No turkey here, Saul. No turkey.